So these are different videos about the joint movement. And again, I hope you can watch these at home, and I hope to maybe have at least one of them open in lab, but they're very informative videos, okay? Let's see this one, wait a minute, the yoint, where is that one? There's one called the yoint. I guess they're Swedish, and instead of saying joint, they call it a yoint. It's a very old video, but it's an excellent video of the joint movements. Okay, so the temporal TMJ consists of the mandibular fossa of the temporal bone, as well as the condyle of the mandible. So and again, you know where that fossa is. You have it labeled on your skull here, okay? And its surface is very thin, compact bone, and it's actually covered with a connective tissue membrane, which you see is this little tiny pink edge here, okay? This larger pink structure is the meniscus of the joint. Okay, so it's a thin, compact bone covered with a fibrous connective tissue membrane, which is not atypical. The articular eminence, just anterior to the fossa, is something that you've labeled already. And it also, same type of bone and covered with that little thin pink connective tissue membrane here. And another component of the this region is the postglenoid process, which is the process just posterior to your mandibular fossa. So here's the postglenoid process, the articular eminence, which are the anterior and posterior borders of the fossa. Okay. So this surface, the top surface of the condyle, is the articular surface of the condyle. It's the very top, it's like the top of your head, where your hair grows from. And it too is covered with that connective tissue membrane. And an interesting fact, the condyle is the last growth center of your body to stop growing. And it continues to grow up to 20 years of age. And what it does is it affects the height of your ramus. So the height of the ramus will continue to grow up into the 20s. Or up to age 20, not into the 20s, excuse me. But that's the last growth center of your body, is your condyle. An important component of the temporomandibular joint is this tendinous capsule that encloses the temporomandibular joint itself, okay? It's actually wrapped around the mandibular fossa, the neck of the condyle, and creates this encasement that's shown here in pink. This is from your book, this image, of this whole joint. But we're going to be talking about what's within the joint itself, within this capsule, okay? Put that art. Here's another image of the temporomandibular joint and the capsule enclosing it here in white. Circle it in pink. Or red, I guess, is the closest I have to pink on this image. So here is that joint of the condyle, and it's the capsule that's enclosing it. So the outer layers of the capsule is just this avascular connective tissue layer, but the inside, the inner layer, does secrete synovial fluid to lubricate this joint, just as it does in other joints of the body. And it is vascular only in the posterior area. So you see this region here on your image where, you know, there's some vascularity only in the posterior region of this joint. That's the only place that this joint is going to receive blood vessel supply or nerve supply, is posteriorly. Okay, so the disc, the articular disc or meniscus, is this kind of curvy structure right here in the middle of the joint. It's a cool looking little structure here, okay? It's a dense fibrous disc. It exists between the fossa and the articular surface of the condyle. And it's very thin in the middle and thicker in its anterior and posterior regions. But it functions, it has an important function as any disc does in any joint. The disc between the vertebrae, the discs in your knees. It functions to absorb forces of mastication, so you're not working bone on bone. And it also helps to ensure stability of the joint during the function of opening and closing the jaw. It's a very, very complicated disc here, our structure here. So again, you get nerve supply from the posterior region of this joint only to this disc. And where this disc has to tolerate its weight, it has no blood, it has limited blood supply or none. It's aneural and avascular in the central region of the disc. So what that means is its healing capacity is very limited once it's damaged, right? And then, of course, synovial fluid, supplies nutrition to this area too. But it has very limited, it's tough to heal this structure once it's damaged. So what I wanted to do, let's look at the attachments of the disc, okay? If we look at it laterally and medially, meaning side to side, if this rubber, this is the back of your skull, okay, one of your models, your budget skull right here, and there's the rubber. Let's pretend that's the disc, okay? So laterally and medially, it's going to attach to the condyle, the disc. So it's hanging onto that condyle. You don't see it in this drawing over here. In this aspect. So this is, I just think, is a cool picture. All right, so medial is toward the midline over here. Here's your nasal cavity. So the upper division of the disc here, so if we look at this upper region in this lateral picture, okay, it is connected to the glenoid process of the postglenoid process of the temporal bone. So you see this tissue here, this kind of connective tissue here coming down to that postglenoid process. That's attaching the upper portion or division of the disc. So I'll put that in red here, okay. The lower portion of the disc, and let's get a different color, is attached with connective tissue to the neck of the condyle. Oh boy, when I do that, darn it. Hold on, I've got my finger too low on the mouse pad. Why can I not? Let me erase all this stuff. So the lower portion here, you see that, you see this connective tissue coming down here and attaching down at the neck of the condyle, down here. Okay? So those are the posterior attachments of the disc. So the body has all these ways to keep that disc in place. All right? From these posterior attachments, from lateral attachments, to the condyle, that we showed over here on this image, and medial attachments. Okay, and naturally there's going to be anterior attachments. Oh, here we go. Here's the posterior. There's also posterior attachments of the disc to the capsule as well. I'm sorry, I didn't cover that. I don't have a picture to show that as well, but if we have the temporomandibular joint capsule here, okay, around this joint, you have these posterior attachment to that capsule itself. So the capsule is helping sustain and retain this disc in place as well. Anteriorly, the disc is attached to the anterior aspect of the capsule. It's also going to have this connective tissue attachment to the articular eminence. So here is anteriorly, we see this attachment here, the tissue here, okay, the articular eminence. It's going to be attached to the anterior surface of the neck of the condyle here. And it's also attached to the superior head of the lateral pterygoid muscle. And I have that indicated with an S. So remember we talked about the lateral pterygoid pulling the condyle anteriorly towards its origin on the inferior surface of the sphenoid bone. Okay. So here's a cool dissection slide. The articular eminence is here. Here is the disc in white in the middle of everything. That cool little S-shaped structure. And then the condyle is down here below. And you can see, you know, how it lies between the articular surface of the condyle and the, well, here it's up toward the articular eminence here. It's not within the fossa. This jaw is open to take this image. The fossa would be posterior here. Here would be the fossa region. There are two synovial spaces, okay? An upper compartment here, put a U, and it continues through here. It's just got a little thin area there. And then there's a lower compartment. I'll do that in a different color. Below the disc and between the head of the condyle. So the upper compartment lies between the superior surface of this meniscus or disc and the mandibular fossa or articular eminence of the temporal bone. Okay, the lower compartment is between the disc and the condyle. And this is important because there's different things that happen in these different locations as we open our jaw. But it is filled with synovial fluid to lubricate things. So I just want to review again with the lateral pterygoid muscle. The superior fibers attach to the anterior aspect of the capsule. Okay, so if I'm going to draw the capsule in here, oops. Okay, so let's just say that's the capsule here. Okay, so if there's superior fibers in this the superior head of the lateral pterygoid attaches to the anterior portion of the capsule. The capsule is attached to the meniscus inside or disc, right? So the muscles over here, The capsule's my vertical hand, and the disc is back here. They're all attached together. The inferior fibers attach, the inferior head or fibers of this joint attached to the bone of the mandible, the neck of the condyle down here. So let's do the superior attachment. No, it's killing you. I'm sorry. I know. Been there. Inferior fibers attached to the neck of the condyle down here. All right. So some of this muscle is attached to the soft tissue components, and some of this muscle is attached to the jaw itself, the bone itself. This is the point here. So when this muscle contracts, it brings the mandible anteriorly, and it also brings the meniscus with it and the capsule of the joint. So it maintains that disc position with, you know, at the head of the condyle as the joint moves. That's important. Okay, we want that disc moving and staying with this condyle as it moves. And that's something you'll see in these videos, all right? The posterior portion that is innervated and everything, this is called the retroarticular, oops, sorry, I didn't realize I was on my pen again, is the retroarticular area. All right, back here, you see little blood vessels in here. All right, now, the movements of this joint should be controlled, and it is by ligaments that prevent things from getting out of place. But what we'll do is I'm going to stop here for today. It's 1/4 till, and I know you've had enough. We'll stop here and begin there. Now, the quiz next week is only going to be on the muscles of mastications. I'm not going to put the TMJ on the quiz next week, okay? No TMJ quiz next week. Just muscles of mastication and the suprahyoids, which they facilitate muscles of mastication. All right, because it's 1/4 till, just about, so I think you've had enough. But we got into it a little bit, so you know what you're in for. It gets tougher. The content gets tough. It really does. All right, now next Wednesday, Wilmington, we don't have a lab because Dover doesn't have a lab on Thursday, which, not next Wednesday, 2 Wednesdays from now. Just want to remind you, there's no lab the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I wish it was next Wednesday, right? Because Dover doesn't have a lab. So I have a homework assignment you're going to be doing. I'm not going to grade it, but we're going to discuss it in the following lab. It's an assignment for you to work on. You can work on it together. It's not graded, you know, you can, but I'll be asking you to present it after we get back from the holiday. Some answers, not all of them, but, you know, I'll just ask you certain people to work in A, work in, you know, case A, B, C. But I just wanted to remind you, there's no class for Wilmington on Wednesday before Thanksgiving, because if I can't have it for Dover, I'm not going to have it for Wilmington. Okay, we have to keep everything fair. All right. Okay, everybody. Enjoy your day. It's going to be a beautiful day.
Thank you.